you can watch this later. And so hopefully you will get to see us at some point in time. And we're really excited to have you here tonight. My name is Michelle McMahon, and I'm the community coordinator of Empower Johnson County. Empower, we are a local coalition here in the community with a mission to empower the Johnson County community to reduce and prevent youth substance abuse through advocacy, education, and enforcement. We have a couple other presenters tonight, all part of the Upstream prevention team. Presenting after me is Miranda Broomfield. She is our assistant community coordinator with Empower. She handles all of our youth efforts, including the sponsorship of our high school youth coalition, Empowered Youth. Then we have Don LaPlante, who is a project coordinator with Upstream Prevention for the Community Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment State Grant. Don works closely with several community partners to provide prevention of substance abuse in our schools and early education facilities. And then we'll hear from Hope Thompson, who is a project coordinator with Upstream as well for the Mental Health Awareness and Training Grant. Hope's role is to focus on overall mental health, stigma reduction, and building awareness and providing training around suicide prevention for the community of Johnson County. So we're really excited to have everyone here tonight, and we're just really looking forward to talking to you about youth substance use, particularly alcohol, and what we can do as parents and caregivers and just caring adults in our community to prevent youth substance use. So I'm going to turn it over to Miranda just for a few housekeeping items.
So as we go along, if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the Q&A box down there at the bottom. You'll see that bubble come up with the Q&A. We will get to all those questions at the end once everyone has presented. That way we can get through the material first and then get you out in a timely manner. And then if you have any kind of technical difficulties as we go along, go ahead and just throw that into the chat box. And we have Kathleen that's kind of working the back end of things to get any kind of help that you need up. And so as we go along, you will kind of just follow along with us, answer, put any questions into the chat box and we will get to them at the end. And then also at the end, even if there aren't any specific questions, we can open that up for discussion. Go ahead and unmute and answer any questions that we may not answer during presentation.
Awesome, thanks Miranda. And I just realized I was not showing the screen, so I'll jump back here for just a moment so you can see again who all these lovely ladies are presenting tonight. Okay, we're going to get started with a few alcohol and other drug facts. Just sharing, nearly 1 in 14 people over the age of 12 in the US have an alcohol or drug use disorder. Alcohol and drug use during the teen years can interfere with normal brain development and increase their risk of developing a use disorder. Injury and violence related to drug use is one of the leading causes of death in teenagers in the US. So this is why it's really important that we're talking about this tonight. Some of the consequences: 47% of children who begin drinking before age 14 will develop an alcohol use disorder at some point in time in their life. For each year earlier than 21 that a child begins to drink, the greater odds are to developing an alcohol use dependence at some point in time of their life. So it's really important that we are trying to get youth to delay the onset of drinking till at least 21, if not older. 9% of youth who do not drink alcohol before they're 21 will still develop an alcohol use disorder in their lifetime. Additional research has found that 90% of Americans who meet clinical criteria for addiction started using before they were 18 years old. This is some of our local trend data. We use the Indiana Youth Survey that's administered through IU each year. And this survey, this is data that are most recent, that this was just occurred here earlier in, I believe, March of 2020. And this is data points from students that have told us what in the past 30 days, if they used alcohol or not. And so if you look at this, the really good thing about this that I see is that Indiana as a whole, as a state, we keep trending down. Our youth are reporting that they are not using alcohol, which is awesome. And we've just been doing this over a number of years. If you see here from the 90s to now, we have just trended down every single year, which means that prevention is working, and it is working here in Indiana. This is the past 30-day use of alcohol. As reported in 2018, we didn't have any newer data to share with you. But if you see here, we are, as in central Indiana, this isn't Johnson County specific, but central Indiana, we are running a little bit lower than Indiana, the statewide statistics on youth who are reporting using alcohol in the past 30 days. And as you can see here, obviously it goes up. So from our 6th graders to our 12th graders, some are reporting that they are using, and at our 12th graders, we still have more reporting that they're using alcohol. One thing to note here, though, is that even our highest use rates are at 30% of 12th graders had reported past day 30-day use, which means that 70% of our youth are reporting that they are not drinking alcohol. So that puts them in the majority of not using, which is really, really exciting. These are some reasons why your child might start drinking or using drugs. When we talk about stress, stress affects all of us. I'm a little bit stressed out doing this right now because it's different for me. I'm not face to face with you. I'm not in a room. I'm sitting by myself and talking to you. So it really can have a lot of impact on our youth as well. So when a child starts to worry about things like their grades or their physical appearance or fitting in with their peers, they might try to drink or use drugs to escape those problems. Then we talk about peer pressure. Between the ages of 11 and 18 is when youth are most likely to be influenced by their friends and social media, even TV, movies, anything like that, even books that they're reading, they're going to start becoming influenced. And then transitions, life events such as changing a high school or moving to college, maybe a breakup, moving, parents' divorce, all of these things can cause stress and have a child who might say, well, maybe I should just have a drink so I can calm down. But we want to share with our youth that having a drink is not going to help you calm down. It's actually going to cause adverse reactions and the adverse effect of what they're going for. So we also want to talk about those resistance skills and how we can encourage our children to say no to help with not starting drinking or using drugs. And then there's COVID. So during COVID-19, alcohol sales went up in stores 21% during the first 7 weeks of lockdown. Online sales more than doubled. So we know that there's alcohol in homes, probably more alcohol in homes than there usually is. So that means that accessibility is much higher, because we might have a home where parents went out and responsibly chose to drink at a restaurant or a bar, and then now they're not doing that because they're closed, and so they're bringing the alcohol home. So we know that youth just in general have more access, and it's much easier access during COVID. So these are all good reasons to talk about this. And I'm going to let Miranda share some more ways and tips on how you can talk to your youth.
Thank you, Michelle. So start talking with your child early and often. This is something that we stress and that we really want to get across, that it's never too early to start talking to your child about alcohol and drugs. And then on the other side of that, I also want to say it's never too late to start that conversation. So if you're joining us and you have a teenager or you have even a child in college, it's never too late to start that conversation. It's also never too early. We also encourage that these talks start before they're exposed to alcohol and other drugs, as early as, early elementary school age. There are, age appropriate conversations that you can have to go ahead and get that conversation started. And we want to have those little talks all through their childhood and then through their teen years and into their college years and even into their adult years. We want to have these frequent little talks rather than sitting them down for this one big talk that has all this stress on top of it. Those little conversations that just kind of happen organically once you get used to starting that conversation and opening that door. And the biggest thing that we stress, we're going to go through some pointers here, but just being direct and honest with your youth and with your child. And whether it's your child or a child that you're just heavily involved with, maybe you're a coach or you're involved at church or you're involved with like a library program or something like that. Just talking to the youth in your life about, choices that they should be making and being able to be direct and honest with them. And then this is just an interesting fact. I have two kids myself, so I have two daughters. One is 17 and one is 9. And I promise, as much as it might seem like your kids don't listen to you sometimes, they really do, and they care about your input. And so, you know, the majority of a high majority, 80% of youth really believe that they should be following whatever their parents believe for them as far as alcohol and drugs come, and making sure that they're following that advice of their parents. So they're going to turn and look to you. You are their number one source of information. It's just, it could be hard for them to bring up this conversation with you, which is why we want to encourage you to start the conversation with them. It's going to be a lot easier as a parent to start that conversation than it is for your teenager to come up to you and say, hey, tell me what you think about alcohol and drugs, right? So we really want to kind of stress this, and this is just kind of a fun fact that you, as you start these conversations, know that your kids do care what you think, and they're listening and they're paying attention. And next slide. And so these are just some conversation goals for you, and to keep that in mind, that your youth do care what you think. And the number one thing, it seems very obvious, showing that you disapprove of drinking. But I think about this as, you know, how are they supposed to know how you feel about it unless you tell them? And I think about, you know, if I tell, you know, being very specific, if I tell my 17-year-old daughter, hey, while I'm at work, can you get the house clean, right? Clean to me means one thing, right? Clean to her means something totally different. So to her, she's like, I'm going to stack this stuff up and I'm going to throw some dishes in the dishwasher and I'm good to go. Whereas I walk in the door and I'm like, I thought I asked you to clean the house and there's still stuff everywhere. And she's thinking I did clean the house. It's the same principle. So making sure that they are very clear on your expectations, that, you know, that they know that you are not okay with them drinking. You're not okay with them being at parties where drinking's happening. Just making sure that your expectations are very clear to them. And as you're doing that, when you're having these conversations, making sure that they know that you're not telling them these things because you want to ruin all the fun or you want to take things away from them, but you're genuinely caring about their safety, their well-being, and their future. Lots of times the youth in our life don't necessarily automatically correlate. If I make a poor decision, this could impact my future. You know, what's the job they want to have when they get older? And you know, if they make this poor decision now and have some of these adverse reactions and these adverse consequences that Michelle was talking about, you know, that could hinder their future. And not all the time can they see past, you know, what's right in front of them. So making sure that they know that the reason that we have these expectations in place, the reasons that we're not okay with this, is because we care about you and we want all of the best things for you. And that kind of takes it from, you know, oh, you ruin all my fun and all of my life, to, okay, you know, that they just care about me and they want the best for me. And if they know that you're on their side and that they're a partner in this conversation, it also helps listening to what they say is going on. Times are very different for all of us than when we were teenagers or when we were in elementary school. There's a lot of social media and a lot of influence. And so, you know, having that conversation of, you know, how things can get out of hand and affect their future and affect their health. And then making sure that they know, you know, that you're a good source of information about alcohol and other drugs, and making sure that you are up to date on those things. Because if you don't have the information, they're going to find it. And so where are they going to find it? Probably from their friends, who probably don't have the best information or the most truthful information, right? They're going to Google it, which who knows what they're going to find that's going to either say, oh, this is going to be totally fine and not hurt you. And they're going to try to, you know, use that as their education to, you know, figuring things out. You are the source of information. And just like we talked about, you know, they care about what you think. And so making sure that, you know they can trust you. They know that you're going to tell them the truth and that you're going to have these conversations with them. So making sure you're that go-to, as they're still going to get information from their friends and from the internet and from, you know, TV shows, right? They're still going to have that information, but we also want your voice, that factual voice who cares about them, cares about their future in their head, because your voice is going to be so much louder than these other ones when it comes down to making a decision. And that's really such a key point in having these conversations. And then just paying attention to them. A lot of this number 4 is, you know, showing them that you care, that you're not always just telling them what not to do, right? That you do know their friends and you do care about where they are. And if they are saying they are going to party, that you are going to check in with them. And if they are going to prom or they're going to some big event, that you expect, you have a time that you want them home by, right? That you're going to be checking in. Youth tend to be a lot riskier if they know that no one's going to check in and no one cares what they're doing. They are going to take a lot more risky decisions at that point. If they know, hey, my mom's going to be up when I get home, my mom's expecting me home, my dad's expecting me home, my grandparents are expecting me home. If they know that that is kind of a precedent for you, then they're more likely to make positive decisions, which kind of brings us to number 5, which is building their skills. So this is as simple as having a plan. Say they do go to a party, they are offered, or some sort of drug or alcohol, that they can, maybe even use you as an excuse. That number 4, my mom's gonna expect home. If I come home and she smells alcohol in my breath, she's gonna take my car. That's gonna be the end. I can't. Give them an excuse, give them a reason to say no. But then also kind of talk through with them, what would you do in this situation? If you were at a party or you did have friends who, were offering you something, what would you do? Because as parents, we kind of go to that, oh, just say no, right? We grew up in the just say no generation, some of us did, and hearing about that, it's a lot harder when you're a teenager and your social life, you feel like depends on this answer, or your friendships depend on this answer. And so making sure we talk through with them, what can you do? And one good tip I always, tell my own kids is, if you're in a situation that isn't right and you're feeling like this is a bad decision, if you can just be the one to speak up and say, I don't really think that's a good idea. If you feel like it's a bad decision, more than likely somebody else in that group also thinks it's a bad decision. And you have just given them a reason to go, oh yeah, me too. I'm gonna go with so-and-so. I also don't feel like this is a good idea. Because if you're feeling uncomfortable, somebody else probably is too. So having that option and then just taking yourself out of the situation. So teaching them, how can they handle these situations? Having a plan. If they are at a party, can they text you a certain thing? Can they say, oh, my mom needs me home because the dog's sick? Give them some excuses, some ways out, some ways to get to safety, and making sure that you're building those strategies for them. And then as you're preparing for these talks, it's not as I'm going to sit down and make a PowerPoint presentation, right? It's not going to be a sit down talk like this. It's just going to be, where can I find ways to start this conversation with my teenager or with my elementary school child or, my college age student? Where can I start these conversations? And I mean, I use TV, Netflix shows all the time with my kids, especially with my high schooler. We watch like Riverdale together or something like that. And I will watch this and it's so easy for me to say, is this really happening? Is this real life? Because some of these things that are happening, and she'll either laugh and say, no, that's not happening, or you'd be surprised. And we can start these conversations. So use what's around you to really get these conversations going. And then, it's as simple as, say you're out to dinner and as, you're with another adult and maybe one of you is, you're of age, you can have a drink, then you be the one who doesn't have a drink and you drive home and you make sure that you kind of, you talk about that or saying, I'm going to drive because, the other adult with us has had a drink, so I'm going to be the safe drive home. That's another way to model, talk very, casually within your family or within the group that you're with. And then, always tell parents that, if you have ever ridden with a teenager or even a preteen or middle schooler, one of the first things they always do when they get in the car is pop their earbuds in their ears. I know somebody else can feel that pain with me. One really easy tip is I will give my teenager control of the radio, right? So sometimes she will, she hooks up to Spotify and sometimes the songs are necessarily not my choice of songs that I want to hear, but she plays them. And then as we go along, those earbuds aren't in. So conversation can just naturally start to happen and you start hearing things and you start seeing ways that you can have conversation. So just finding time in your everyday life to have these little talks so that they can kind of build on one another. And so when things pop up, they might come to you on one of those car rides or out to dinner. They might say, hey, remember we were talking about that last week? You will never believe what happened. And they'll start that conversation with you. So just, preparing yourself as you go along to keep having those continuous conversations. And then just tough questions, right? As parents, we start these conversations and we think we have all these answers, and then they start asking questions that you're like, wow, you're way smarter than me, right? I don't know the answers to these all the time. Just being prepared. And one of the big things, especially with younger youth, is, we don't want you to use scare tactics with them. If they're asking why are drugs and alcohol bad for me, I think about smoking cigarettes. If my 9-year-old is asking me, why are smoking cigarettes bad for me? My answer is not going to automatically be, well, if you smoke a cigarette, you're going to die, right? Like something extreme and scary. And why don't I say that? Yes, that could be a long-term effect, but for her, she's 9 and she's very literal. So that's going to stick in her head. And when she, if she was a teenager and one of her friends or even her herself tried and smoked a cigarette one time and they were okay, they lived, she's going to think, why did my mom lie to me? Nothing happened to me right then, right? So being honest about, these are long-term effects that can happen if you start talking that way, but don't try to just scare them, because as soon as they find out that, wait a minute, that didn't actually happen to me, number one, you've kind of taken that fear away and opened a pathway, but then they also feel a little bit betrayed that you weren't telling them the full truth to begin with. And again, I got invited to a party, asking your child, when are you going to be home? Are there going to be adults at this party? Asking them directly, do you think there's going to be alcohol or other drugs there? And just starting, those conversations and making sure that you're really following through with your expectations and reminding them, how I feel about this. If there is any alcohol that shows up, you need to call me, you need to come home, and being very direct with them. And then there's all kinds of tough questions. What if my friends are asking? We talked about that a little bit already. What are some ways that their refusal skills and practicing some excuses with them? And then as a parent, the dreaded, did you drink or use drugs when you were a kid? Obviously this is age appropriate, but if they're asking you, I encourage you to be as honest as possible with them, and letting them know, I didn't know then what we know now, right? It's the same thing we hear all the time with smoking. A lot of people didn't realize how risky it was. Now we do. So making sure that, now if we know better, we try to do better type of approach is really important when it comes to those questions. And then, just continuing those talks like we said. As children get older, the conversation is going to change. And I would encourage you, we do have a really good resource on our Empower Johnson County website. And it's under the events where we just had Red Ribbon Week, which was for, Johnson County schools across, all 6 school districts. And there is a good conversation starter piece. If you scroll down under events where we had Red Ribbon Week, there's conversation starters for every age. Because if you're talking to an early elementary school student, you're not talking about specific drugs necessarily, but you're talking about, what are some ways that we can keep our body really healthy? And that is, we can drink water, we can exercise, we can eat healthy foods. And they start correlating that I need to put healthy, good things into my body. And then that conversation evolves. They become an older elementary school student, and it says, you're talking to them about your brain isn't fully developed until you're 24. So, what are some things that could have a negative impact, and what are some things that could have a positive impact? And they'll remember from that earlier conversations that you had, like, oh yeah, drinking water and exercising, those are good things. What are some bad things? Maybe instead of drinking water, drinking alcohol could be bad for my brain. Starting those conversations and just rolling with those as they come along, and being willing to just continue conversations throughout the entire spectrum of their life. And, just keep reminding them that they can come to you, and that if you don't have the answers, you are willing to sit down and try to find them with them and be honest and be a partner in them figuring out this world and figuring out how they can make the best decisions for themselves.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Miranda.
Yeah.
I'm going to now turn it over to Dawn to share about how wonderful and awesome and strong our youth are, and share some wonderful sources for you.
Great. Thank you very much, Miranda. Awesome job. I don't really want to repeat a lot of what you've said, but the one thing I do want to stress is stress. Our kids have a lot of stress on them, and probably within the next few weeks, it's going to get a lot worse. So step back a little bit and think of about 3 stressors you have right now that you are dealing with. If you want to put them in the chat box, that's good. If not, that's okay. I mean, some of us are are really struggling with the decision for Thanksgiving. Should we go to grandma's house? Should we not go to grandma's house? That type of thing. The other thing is maybe the cars needs repaired, or you have a car accident and you have to deal with the insurance. Right, Michelle? But those are things that we have to deal with. But our kids have so much stress, and they're dealing, like I said, with a lot. So when they start having those moods swings at wonderful teenage years, you have to kind of step back a little bit and say, yeah, I was a teenager. I understand what you're going through, but really focus on your kids' strengths instead of what's going on that they're stressing over. Upstream has gone into the school systems now and started a program called Sources of Strength. And basically that Sources of Strength really focuses on a peer-to-peer relationship. We want kids to feel comfortable talking to other kids about what's going on in their life and how they're feeling, and then go talk to a trusted adult. So we as parents need to be that trusted adult and be able to kind of set the example and follow through. Being a parent is probably the #1 stressing position we'll ever have. And we all make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. But we need to keep positive with our kids. We've all yelled. We've all done things that we want to take back, but we really do need to focus on the strengths that we have. Sources of Strength, like I said, focuses a peer-to-peer interaction and focuses on 8 strengths that are common for most young kids that help them get through their struggles, whether they're struggling with depression or being traumatized or addiction issues, intense conflicts, or even suicidal issues. Sources of Strength developed this wheel, which they found that through a lot of their students and youth, that these are the 8 core strengths that we really want these kids to focus on. And of course, every kid has one of these strengths. They may not think they do, but they do once they start looking a little bit deeper. We want them to have more than one strength. We want, we don't want to have a basketball player who is a great athlete and then gets hurt in that one strength. That good basketball is gone. What are they focusing on? Depression hits, maybe suicidal indices coming on, or using a substance. And we want to make sure we're reading our kids and encouraging them to have more than one strength. The Sources of Strength wheel, again, they have family support, whether that be your biological family or a family that, your best friend's family or anyone else around your core. Positive friends. We want our kids to be around people that are positive, not the ones that we always said are the troublemakers in class, but we want them to be around people that are going to give them positive feedback and be a good example for them. Mentors, of course, we want to have our teachers and our youth leaders to be around, to be their mentors. And you're going to be a big part of a mentor for your kids. Healthy activities, like I said, encourage your kids to get outside. Even in this cold weather, they can go ride their bike. Sometimes that healthy activity, or read a book, or do yoga, or even just listening to music, sometimes will help their mood. Generosity could be all kinds of things. With COVID, a lot of our kids have reached out to different organizations to help with distributing food, to helping neighbors around. It's all kinds of things. It's not just giving money. It's helping with being a kind person. Spirituality could be a little bit of everything, and believe in whatever you want to believe in. Of course, mental and physical health. We have to make sure we're taking care of ourselves and our kids. Just like if you broke your leg, you would go to the doctor. if you're not feeling good and you know your child is depressed or has, you know, started a substance, getting help, go to the doctor, that type of thing. And remind your kids that they all have strengths, and then remind yourself you have strengths too. I'm going to hop over to Hope, and she's going to kind of tell you how to take care of yourself.
As a parent and caregiver, you need to be sure to take care of yourself in order to take care of others, right? I'm sure that you've heard that before, and I think for a lot of people that can be easier said than done at times. I want you to think about, to yourself, think about what coping skills that you've used to manage stress. What have you done to help yourself in different stressful situations or challenges? And think about, are they healthy? Are they unhealthy? I'm going to assume there's probably a little bit of both there. I think we all have a little bit of both. But if there are some healthy strategies that you've used to manage stress, whether it's navigating holidays or changes that keep happening in schools or any other challenges you encounter, if you feel comfortable about it, go ahead and put those in the chat box, those healthy coping strategies that you think have been successful for you. We'll talk more about those in a minute. So you are the most important person in the world to your children, and they watch you. What do you model for them? How do you want your kids to handle and respond to stress in their life? So the best way to teach them, of course, is to show them and model that for them and demonstrate that. That gives them tools, and it's going to help them be more successful in managing those themselves. So what are some healthy habits? So there are quite a few. We don't have enough time to go into like all of them. So here are just a few to mention. Physical activity, any kind of physical activity is going to be helpful. There is a connection to your mood with exercise. That's a definite research-based fact. So any physical activity, whether it's whatever you can spare, anything's better than nothing. Eating a well-balanced diet. Again, you know, the food you put in your body affects your mood, affects how your body feels, which then affects how your mind feels. So it is all connected. Getting enough rest. That's another one that can be easier said than done at times. But sleep is so huge to your mental health. It can really, really make a difference. And so that's something you really want to make a priority and figure out, is it a time thing that you can make a priority, or is it a, I need to do some relaxation thing to quiet my mind so I can go to sleep at night? And then making time for fun and hobbies. You know, parenting is the hardest job in the world, and you got to have a little fun at times and laugh and enjoy the simple things. So again, you know, if it's 10 minutes a day doing something just for yourself that you enjoy, make time for that. And then relaxation strategies. So there's meditation, there's different breathing exercises, there's like progressive muscle relaxation type things. Some people love that stuff and find it very helpful, and some people it's just not for them, but I would encourage you to give it a try if you haven't before. So all of these things play a role in improving mood and decreasing stress in the body. If you're not practicing any of these, pick one to shoot for as a starting point. And then lastly, resources. So there are a ton of apps out there that focus on self-care. I mean, it can, again, there's like apps for like meditation, there's apps for different like physical movement things, there's apps to help you fall asleep at night. I mean, there's quite a bit. So here's a list of apps, and it explains a little bit about what they entail. Many are free, some are not, but you'll see that. And then there's a website here if you're interested in just reading up and learning a little bit more about self-care, to check that out. And then lastly, Upstream Prevention. We have on our website, we have a list of resources for mental health. So if you're finding that you're really stressed and some of these strategies aren't working for you and it's affecting your ability to function in daily life, then it would be a good idea to talk to your primary care doctor or reach out to a mental health professional for some additional supports.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Hope. We really appreciate everyone tonight. These are our presenters and our contact again. It's pretty easy. All of us are just our first name at upstreamprevention.org. So we have Michelle, Miranda, Dawn, and Hope. And so we're just really excited, and we want to thank you for attending tonight. Just some other resources for you. If you want to, our website at upstreamprevention.org has some great resources. We also have a link for our Empower page. There's a link for Hope there. There's a link for Dawn. So if you want to find out more information. If you want to learn any more about Talk They Hear You, a lot of our presentation tonight was including Talk They Hear You, which is a SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration. It was provided by them. So they have some amazing resources for getting those conversations started. They even have videos. They even have an opportunity where you can go in and start a conversation through an app. So if you're interested in that, check out their website as well. And then, as always, we at Upstream Prevention would love it if you would join us, either by serving on one of our coalitions or boards, or just being a supporter from afar and participating and getting our newsletter and learning more about all of the great things that we have going on and celebrating the youth in your lives. So I want to turn it over to Miranda. If we had any questions, now would be time for discussion. If any of you, if any participants had anything that they wanted to share or any discussions, we can do that now.
Yeah, so I don't know that any questions came through the Q&A box yet, but I will give you guys a minute to enter any in if you had any questions or things that you wanted clarified, or any things that you thought of as we kind of went along. I know that Kathleen has done a great job in the chat box. If you'll check there, links to all of the different things that Hope talked about, and Dawn and Michelle and I, and our pages, they're all there, that you can kind of feel free to look through, scroll, save those if you want. So if you want to come back to them at a later time. And then she's also put on there, if you do want to subscribe to our monthly newsletters, that info at upstreamprevention.org that you see at the bottom of your screen right now will get you all of the updated information of things that we all have going on. So we all fall under the Upstream umbrella. And so if you want to keep up to date with what we're all doing, that's probably one of the easiest ways. And I don't think anything has come through the Q&A. So I just want to thank everyone for coming, and thank all of our presenters tonight. And feel free to reach out to us and find us on Facebook or on our webpage. And looks like, oh, hang on, wait a minute. So one of the questions did come through. So do you recommend parents monitoring their children's use of phone or internet?
That's a good question.
It is a great question. So I'm going to give you from my own perspective, right? I told you that I have 2 daughters. One of them is in high school. I always think it's important to know what's going on in your child's life. I also think that I think it's important to have boundaries set with them and to be honest with them about what you're doing. I do check my child's phone, but she also is aware that I'm checking her phone. And I'm not checking her phone to try to catch her in something, mainly just to make sure she's okay. Because there's situations that can get so big, and as she's gotten older, that's gotten a lot less, right? She has to have this independence and growing, but in general, it's important to know what's going on in your child's life. And one of the things, at Empower, we do like a hidden in plain sight, where we're talking to parents about these are some things to look for if you're concerned and you're seeing these warning signs from your child and you think they might be using. But we stress, just because, because sometimes vaping devices can look very similar to a USB, for example, but we aren't telling parents, go tear your child's room apart looking for a vaping device, or don't dump out their backpack looking for, alcohol or a hidden container. If you things or you're thinking, man, their mood has been really different, they're hanging out with new friends, something feels off. Hopefully, number one, you've been having conversations with them so you can kind of sit down and say, I've noticed something's different. But yeah, of course, making sure that you're involved enough to know when things are changing and know what's going on in their life, and knowing their friends is important.
Yeah,
Michelle,
and I would add to that social media join the social media platforms that they're using. Make sure that they know that you are who you are. Trying to set up like something where you look like Ryan Reynolds and you're following them all of a sudden and you don't actually look like Ryan Reynolds. That's not going to work. But, you know, letting them know like, hey, I'm on TikTok now too. This is my name, you know, and I want to kind of see what you're seeing as well. Just knowing what they're looking at and being part of that world. You can gauge a lot as a parent when you really see what they're seeing, and you can start to understand maybe why they're feeling the way that they're feeling. Because if they're being pumped full of negativity and a lot of self-deprivation or like talk and talking down or things like that, then they're going to start feeling the weight of that. And so if you're trying to figure out where is that coming from, you know, join on to the same social media platforms that they are and get an account, but be very transparent about it. Let them know that you're there too. I think that's a really, really important thing, that we don't want our kids not to trust us. We don't want to give them a reason not to trust us. So it goes back to that, being honest with them when you're having these conversations, being open with them about it, but letting them know that you care, and you care enough to also make silly videos and look like a fool alongside of them. So I think we would recommend that.
Yeah, just open, honest conversation, communication, and knowing that every child's different, right? And nobody knows your child as well as you do. So, you know, that's one of the things we always say. As a parent, you know your child best. And so looking out for those warning signs and having those conversations with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Good question. Do we have any more?
That was a great question. That was the only one that came through. If anyone else wants to throw one in the chat or in the Q&A really quickly, we'll answer it.
And I think they can actually unmute and talk. You could actually ask a question if you have a question.
Yep. But we'll give it a couple minutes. And then if not, then we will kind of exit out of this. But we appreciate you guys being online with us and sharing your evening with us.
Definitely. It's a lot of fun.
I know.
Yeah. This is more people than we get to see in our usual day from working socially distant from other people. So
fun. It's been fun.
Yeah.
All right. It doesn't look like anything else is coming through at the moment. If you do have something that you want to ask any of us, like I said, go ahead and send us an email at info@upstreamprevention.org, or find us on social media on Facebook or Instagram, and we will be happy to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And like we said, this is being recorded, so please feel free. We're going to send out a link after the recording is all taken care of, and you can share that with your friends or other parents or caregivers or youth workers if you feel like this has been useful. And also, if you feel like this has been useful or you have any tips for us, please shoot us an email and just let us know. We're always looking to provide the best information that we can, and we really want to know what do you need to know as a parent or a caregiver, and how can we help you? That's what we're here for. We want to support you. So thanks again, and thank you, ladies, for your time tonight. Appreciate you presenting, and have a great evening. Thank you.